Well, we had some record highs today, and we're probably going to see some record highs tomorrow and some record highs Saturday before things start to change. We are also watching a snowstorm in the northern plains that will be pulling away to the northeast. And there are a few other interesting things going on. And of course, we always like to talk about interesting things right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast on this Thursday, the 26th of October. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Mulch, topsoil, and sand, and anything else you need to make your home stand out. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. And of course, you cannot possibly find better prices anywhere. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And we are also brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, folks, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is going to be pinned now to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you do decide to purchase this or anything else from the Tempest by Weatherflow website, use that coupon code I want a weather station. And if you do, you will get
10% off, Joe. Well, don't say Joe, but you will get 10% if you
right.
say I want a weather station.
It's I want a weather station.
I want a weather station. Just go up there to the desk and just start pounding, I want a weather station.
Yes.
Give it to me.
I'll let you have it.
Well, Joe, Tom Contino on the chat board has made a request of you.
I just read it.
So I'll leave it up to you. Or should we just move on?
Well, I wanted to say I hope everybody enjoyed last night's show as much as I did doing it. I honestly I thought it was one of the best shows we've ever done. In case you missed it, the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast last night, we had Dave Tolleris of Weather Risk and Bill Goodman from the Weather Service in Upton, New York, and we talked about the upcoming winter of 23-24, and it was a very, very interesting and lively, moving conversation. I think we got a lot of stuff covered. I don't think we necessarily got to the answers of what the winter's going to be like, but we certainly laid out. I certainly think Dave laid out a case for a colder than normal and a snowier than normal winter in not just the Northeast, but maybe up and down the East and across parts of the Deep South, which I know the folks down here who are mostly snow lovers would love to hear that. I would just say this: there was, he made a number of great points were made last night, and I think, and I was talking with Bill Goodman about this today, Joe. Explaining the fact that we were talking about the fact that I expressed the idea that we've seen so many strange things go on in the last year or so, and that we're liable to see strange or even stranger things over the coming months. And he laid out the case for how what we have, being that the Earth temperatures have warmed. I mean, not to get into a conversation about climate change because that's not what this is about, but that the Earth's temperatures have warmed. I think that's indisputable based on the data. And what you're doing is that you are overlaying on top of that warming the normal cycles of weather that occur, and as a result, those cycles become more exaggerated, more volatile. And I think that's I think that's a reasonable way to look at what we have going forward this winter. with the state of the atmosphere, and that's kind of where my thesis is with regards to the fact that we could see some pretty strange things.
Yeah, maybe we ought to make the official song of this upcoming winter Red Buttons hit from like 1958. Strange things are happening.
Yes. Well, it's funny.
Because I mean, you're right, and I'll tell you what. Before the winter is over, we're all. I mean, I'm sure that you and I, and Dave and Bill and any other meteorologist is going to say, "Boy, I didn't expect to see that happen."
Well,
Well, I've never seen anything like that
uh,
happen.
on,
But this is.
on that particular note, did you happen to look at the 12Z run of the GFS all the way through?
You mean all the way out to 384 hours?
Right.
No, I didn't go that
Okay.
far out.
All right. Then this, yeah, I sometimes kid around about the fact that um, there's a little person, with a cap on and glasses, a clipboard, and a pencil, and he writes down on his paper. He's the one who actually creates the model runs, and and there's always something on the model run that a new model run that just sort of throws your line of thinking. Well, I think that person was watching the special Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast last night. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's on it's on my YouTube channel library. It's under special shows, and it's also under the Joe and Joe Weather Show playlist. But anyway, he must have heard me because from the idea of strange, because nothing, and I repeat, nothing was stranger than what the GFS did today in the long range. And I'm going to run it through right now. I just want to get the right background here. So here we go, and as we get the whatever we get as things roll along. It gets cold, it gets warm again. Well, not that warm, but it gets warm again, then it gets cold again. But we've seen a number of runs lately where the models in the long term on the GFS keep trying to spin up some sort of a hurricane in the Northwest Caribbean. And Joe, here we have a hurricane in the Northwest Caribbean. Out there, this is on November 7th. There's a big, almost 1030-ish high that is south of James Bay. The hurricane deepens to a 957 pressure, makes landfall in southwest Florida, and then shoots up the east coast, and I guess transitions to a super powerful extratropical cyclone, a 965 low at okay at 965 low. Oh, you see it at 38 and a half and 71.6. Now that purple that you see over Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and southern New Hampshire, that's like off the wall heavy sleet. And the dark blue is off the wall heavy snow, which gets even darker and heavier when the low gets to 962 just east of Cape Cod by 336 hours, and then goes on its merry way to Nova Scotia as a major bomb. Uh, and now to have, it's not that it hasn't happened before, because it actually has. There have been uh, cyclones go back far enough. You can find a couple of them that have in the late season, that when they transition over to an extratropical cyclone, that they've produced big snows up in Canada, up in Atlantic Canada, and also even up in northern New England. But this one really took the cake for me when I saw this. I said, well, if my theory about something strange happening, uh, the idea that you could get a tropical cyclone become a hurricane, maybe even a Category 3 hurricane that goes into Florida and then becomes this monstrous post-tropical or extratropical cyclone that produces a burying snowfall, a burying wet snowfall in the early part of November in the Northeast. I think that cuts it. And here's the close-up view of it too. I mean, aside from the fact that we would be absolutely flooded with heavy rain, but this would, I mean, this was so funny when I saw this. I said, the guy with the cap and the clipboard and the glasses heard me. And then I said, Joe, I have to look at the snowfall amounts that it generates. And
Oh, of course.
I mean, you've got 30-inch plus amounts being generated as far south as northwestern Connecticut and western Massachusetts. I mean, this was hilarious to see. It really was. I'll say two things about it. First of all, it's in the long range, and if you look at the 18Z run, it's gone anyway. So there's that,
I
uh,
figured that.
and that would not be a surprise. However, I will say this, and if we look at this on the Atlantic um, view, both the European and the GFS, Joe, do show lower than normal pressures. If you look at I got the surface with the anomalies, the pressure anomalies, normalized anomalies for this, normalized for this time of year in terms of higher than normal or lower than normal pressures. And both the European and the GFS show the Caribbean being in a state of below normal pressures starting actually kind of starting now. So I would not be. While I obviously do not believe at this, right now, there's no way you could use that as a forecast tool. But um, I do believe that what the models are signaling, and this is a way that I think people should, when you look at these long range things, you got to sort of look at, you have to look deep, and you can't really take it too literally. But I really think the signal and the idea that we're going to see below normal pressures for the next 2 weeks across the Caribbean, that the models are signaling that another one or possibly two tropical systems may wind up developing there in the next 2 weeks, and I think that's a
Sure.
reasonable assumption.
Why not just go through the whole list of names? We're so far down on the list, we might as well just use them all up. What the heck?
Oh,
And they,
yeah,
we bow to
exactly.
we bow to Colorado and all of the forecasters at NHC who said this was going to be an above normal season in spite of an El Nino. But we got into all of that last night. But heck, that's the only one I know who'd probably maybe something like Bolaris breaking in on the soap operas this afternoon to say, everybody, the storm of the century is coming in 10 days.
Which century?
Yeah.
Right, but in all seriousness, I think the models, both, as I said, both the European, the GFS, the Canadian. I didn't really give the Canadian a good look, so maybe before I speak, but I'm sure it's probably along. Yeah, I mean, even the Canadian is showing below normal pressures all across the Caribbean basin there. So I think something is going to try to come out of there in some form or another. There's going to be some sort of gyre that's going to develop down there over Central America, and hey, you know what? Stranger things have happened. you know, Nothing would shock me if that long range thing wound up being right. I mean, a lot of things have to happen before for that to actually verify that way. But the point is, I think it's got the idea though that we're going to probably get another name or possibly two named storms out of the way before the hurricane season's over.
I seem to recall back in the 80s, there was a hurricane by the name of Gene that worked its way northward and did set off snow in parts of the mid-Atlantic or Northeast. I don't remember the year exactly. Maybe some of you can go back on Wikipedia or whatever and find it was the Hurricane Gene. It was in the Gulf of Mexico,
Right.
and somehow worked its way northward, and the precip changed to snow as it headed north.
Well, and don't forget, when Hurricane Sandy produced 2 and 3 foot snows in the mountains of West Virginia. When it was, when it moved up and was on its way to making landfall. So there was that.
Right.
And then the whole upper feature that drove all of that, which took the better part of 10 days to get out of the way, that eventually produced snow on Long Island and around New York City and a few other places.
Day
Uh,
after
uh,
election day.
yes. So I mean, uh, this is not something I mean, really extraordinary because it has happened before. So, but you have to have an absolutely perfect setup. That's not something that certainly could be determined at this point. Meanwhile, record highs today. I saw you had broke the 80-degree mark. And Hurricane Tammy, which is now a post-tropical cyclone east of Bermuda, you sort of see it on the far right, the edge of it, the western edge of it on the satellite loop, and it looks like it's kind of curling northwestward now. Joe, that built the ridge and held it firm. But the other thing it did, because you talked about the fact that we a couple of nights ago we were talking about, well, there was high clouds that would be streaming in. Well, the ridge got pushed back so far north that all those high clouds went through upstate New York and northern New England, and
Yeah.
skies yesterday and today were pretty much mostly sunny. You had a good solid launching pad. It's a warm ridge. So the temperatures are busted up to the upside, and I think you're probably going to see the same thing happen tomorrow.
Well, it appears that in 1963 there were more than a few days when we set records, and these are the records, the 63 records. 60 years ago, these are the records that are either in jeopardy or have already been broken. Even at the Westchester County Airport, they got up to 79 and broke the 77-degree record from 63. And tomorrow and again on Saturday, again, records are going to be in jeopardy because we're going to be very close to, if not above 8. And I've maintained, now I hit 81 degrees today here in Putnam Valley, but I still maintain that when everything is all over said and done, we will see the warmest temperatures on Saturday, in part because I think the winds are going to be mostly west or west southwest. When a westerly wind in this pattern out ahead of an approaching cold front always seems to bump temperatures way up. And indeed, that looks
Well,
like it's going to be the case.
and as long as we don't get any kind of over the top blow off clouds, high clouds, if it winds up
Right.
being mostly sunny most of the day, what, 85 for somebody?
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, it got to 80 to it made 80, 81. Even areas in North Shore of Long Island in Nassau County got to over 80. What's going to stop it? I just don't see what could stop it.
And of course, earlier on in the month, we had a few days where it was 80 degrees. And I remember not a few forecasters saying, well, I hope you enjoyed it. Probably won't see 80 under the temperatures like this again until next spring. And now, not only is there a chance that we're going to do it again, well, we already did it today in many areas, but not only we look like we're going to do it again tomorrow on Saturday, we may even surpass what we saw early in October in terms of extreme warmth. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then, of course, after the front goes by, we're going to flip in the other direction and get colder air. Meanwhile, all that colder air from Canada has been pouring down into the Dakotas and Montana. They've got snow going on. You can see on the satellite loop the rotation there of the of the upper feature in eastern Montana that's moving eastward. So they're getting a fairly sizable snowfall in those areas, and there's energy that goes back still off the Pacific Northwest. And meanwhile, you've got the cold front that's just going to try to edge its way east. Uh, Satellites, start to get to the deeper part of the fall, and the satellites start looking busier and busier. Now, here's the radar, and there's actually, I mean, there are some, believe it or not, there are some echoes aloft in northern Pennsylvania. I don't think any of this is reaching the ground. Way up in northern New York, northeastern New York, probably got some rain coming down there. And then we've got some scattered patches of showers and some heavier downpours across the Great Lakes, back through Wisconsin, down into Illinois and Indiana, and then there's a line of showers and probably a couple of thunderstorms. I see a tornado warning flashed there, well northwest of Houston in Texas, as part of this cold front moves on through. And here's your snow on the radar across North Dakota and eastern Montana. I would say that those darker greens, they're probably getting inch and a half per hour snows in some places as that storm system continues to work its way to the east. And just a little bit of action up there in the Pacific Northwest. Winter storm warnings, Joe, are up for the eastern half of Montana, much of North Dakota except the southeast, and a small portion of northwestern Minnesota. Also, winter storm warnings in northwestern Wyoming. There's a peppering of winter weather advisories that surround that. And there's also a few winter weather advisories up for north central Nebraska. So they must be getting something there. Frost and freeze warnings along the coast of the Pacific Northwest and down into Northern California. Uh, so you have that. And meanwhile, there's no warnings. Did you put fog in the forecast for tonight? I mentioned that there might be a little patchy fog that'll develop.
I mentioned it tomorrow night in the Hudson Valley. I didn't mention it tonight. I think tonight those clouds that you mentioned, those high and mid-level clouds, are sinking southward. In fact, I saw them when I walked the dog about a half an hour ago. So I don't think it's going to be I said partly to mostly cloudy tonight, but I think tomorrow night it's going to be mainly clear, and with temperatures in the high 50s to near 60 for a low temperature tomorrow night. And that's the normal high for this time of the year. It's even a tad above the normal high. We've got a couple of really mild nights coming up. But tomorrow night, with that wide open sky and almost full moon, yeah, I mentioned the possibility of some patchy fog.
The Storm Prediction Center has a small area of marginal risk in southeast Texas, in the interior, right where that that tornado warning that we just saw come and go on the radars. Otherwise, not much happening, and there's no severe weather that's forecast for the next couple of days. WPC, and this is with the cold front for Sunday and into Monday with some showers now producing a half an inch for the northern half of New Jersey and Long Island, 3/4 of an inch to an inch as you go further north into Pennsylvania and upstate New York and into interior New England. We still are also showing some heavy rains of up to several inches from southeast Oklahoma, the northwestern half of Arkansas, northeastward into southern Missouri and into southern Illinois. Patch of some heavy 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half of precip, and that would be snow in the western half of Colorado, and not a whole lot of precip, 1/4 to a half an inch, maybe a few spots a half inch to an inch in parts of the Pacific Northwest. And just speaking of snow, we could show you the probabilities for at least 4. If I can make this map stand out a bit more. And I put the state borders on it for you. This is the probability of at least 2 for the overnight. And it's from eastern Montana, northeastward up into northwestern Minnesota, continuing into Canada. And then you've got this patch in Colorado, west of Denver, and northwest of Denver, and also up in northwestern Wyoming, where we still have winter storm warnings up. If we go to the probability for at least 4, you'll see that across North Dakota, 95 to 100% in that dark red. And in Colorado, it's a 50% or higher. In some places, it's at 80% or higher with the probability for at least 4. And for the probability of at least 12, low chance in central and eastern North Dakota. We're saying about 10 to as much as 20% maximum, and also low chance in those mountains west of Denver. And what else did I want to show here tonight? No, that kind of covered that part of it. All right, so let's look. One of the things we talked about last night, among so many things, was the persistent negative NAO. And if you look at it, it's been mostly negative from the end of June right to the present time, and except for a small period there in early September. Right now we're about maybe, I don't know, half a standard deviation negative. It's not very negative. It goes to the neutral line right around Monday, okay? And then it goes slightly negative again. It can't seem to push its way up over the neutral line. So that probably carries us out, I would say, to about November 8th, November 9th. So we still have this slightly negative, let's call it, North Atlantic oscillation. All right, so we'll take a look at the models. The chairman, Scott Briller, hitting Super Chat tonight, and he said for the first time since last spring, the morning low in the lower 48 dropped below zero, Joe, -4 in Chester, Montana. Wherever Chester may be, I have no idea.
Is that next to Riley, Montana?
Yes, it's William Bendix in The Life
Yeah.
of Riley.
What a revolting development that was. Anyway,
Yes.
well, we're
Oh,
really showing our age now.
yes. Not half as revolting as Tom Contino's question, but we won't go there. So anyway, um, so here's the upper air pattern that we have to play with for the coming week. Let me see what run. I'm going to use the 12Z run. I mean, if that's the one that's going to bury New England, we might as well use it. And I'm being facetious, folks. I don't want anybody to think that I'm seriously considering what that model is doing right now. But there's your ridge in the east, and now, of course, it starts to slowly flatten out tomorrow and Saturday as that western trough begins to swing eastward and gradually overpowers the Great Lakes, the plains, down into the south. It pushes into the deep south and into the east. So that's this cold front that's going to be coming through. And we'll see temperatures start to drop on Sunday, but the real colder air is going to come later Monday night, Tuesday, and I'm thinking, Joe, maybe Tuesday night, Wednesday morning will be the coldest morning that we'll have. And I also think that with this, we should probably see maybe frost is going to depend on whether we're dealing with any wind. So we can't really say that right now, much on that right now. But maybe this will produce some of the first freezes in interior New England, interior New York State, Pennsylvania, around the Great Lakes, and possibly even down through the Appalachians.
Well, the interesting thing is on Sunday, high pressure is going to be banked to our north. The front is going to be to our south. So we'll be in kind of a raw type of weather regime on Sunday with probably winds coming out of an east or east-northeast direction. But there's a wave of low pressure on that front to our west. And the wave may, if it passes just off to our west, Joe, it may force that front to our south to move north temporarily.
Yes,
and we may
that is a possibility.
And on Sunday night, after a raw day with temps in the 50s, don't be surprised if that happens. Temperatures may actually rise into the 60s, very mild, as is the case the next couple of nights here on Sunday night. And then come early Monday morning, the cold front finally pushes on through and puts us back in that much chillier airflow for good. Well, not for good, but for a much longer interval of time for Monday and Tuesday. And yeah, if we can clear things out on Tuesday night, which is, of course, Halloween, if not Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday night, we will be looking at temperatures that are going to be well down in the 30s. And we could very well see not simply frost, but we may see freeze advisories or freeze warnings posted, at least in parts of the tri-state area, most notably in the Hudson Valley or northwest New Jersey.
In the meantime, as we go forward in the upper air pattern, the trough drops into the east, then it sort of pulls out like they like to do. We get into a little bit of ridging at the end of next week, and then it's more the same. I mean, these troughs just continue to want to drop into the eastern part of the United States in some form or another. I mean, I really don't see that breaking down anytime soon. The other thing, Joe, that I think is interesting is that when you look out in the Pacific, and I think the Pacific is where we really have to pay attention to in terms of eventually what drives the overall pattern, there's no sign of a fire hose. You've got ridges and troughs out there. There's a couple of deep lows, one around the Aleutians, another one that extends out into the Gulf of Alaska. And as long as we don't see any evidence of a west to east jet in the Pacific that runs from Japan to Los Angeles, from Tokyo to Los Angeles, and you get that Pacific fire hose. I mean, right now the upper air looks a whole lot different than it has looked in the past couple of years, going into this, going deeper into the fall months.
And that's what we were talking about last night. I mean, like for the last 3 years in that La Nina pattern, the script is most definitely different as we head into the fall and winter of 2023, as opposed to the last 3 years.
Oh, no question. So I've switched over to the 18Zs. We already got a look to the 12Z GFS. But here you have it, and here's your high with your west wind. In the west, the low runs up into the western lakes tomorrow morning, so the snows will taper off and end from west to east. But you're left with a pretty nice sized cold high there in Montana, and that cold air gradually spreads out east and then goes south. There's actually another wave, and this is where you start to see on Saturday into Sunday, where it's showing snow in Colorado and some lighter snows into southern Nebraska and northwestern Kansas with a sleet boundary in the middle, Miss Fowlerite. So you know what? You're going to be cold, and that pushes southward. Uh, the you got that wave, Joe, Sunday afternoon. It's got a wave there in West Virginia. So yeah, it's on the flattish side, but I think you're right about the fact that we probably do need to watch to see if if it winds up tracking a little bit further to the north where you just sort of temporarily get warm sector. That's not impossible. And there are showers that are going to come in Sunday morning and run through. Maybe there's a little bit of a break before that second wave goes by and the front comes through. We'll probably get another round of showers on Monday. And then that cold air from the west and north starts to filter down, gets all the way down into the southern states. That would be me. So I have a cold middle part of next week to look forward to. I could run the fireplace, and this is going to be another one of those. After this front goes by, it looks like much of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Saturday. Doesn't look like much happens because it's going to take a while for another front to come in. But um, it doesn't look like it's going to be, when that cold air mass moderates, it doesn't look like it's going to be a warm up like this. I think there's probably going to be some onshore flow to deal with, and that means clouds, and eventually maybe some rain. And if the GFS is right, next weekend will be another weekend where we'll see rain. So this one here is going to be the 8th in a row. This weekend coming up, if it rains on Sunday.
I think, though, Joe, there have been so many of them. I mean, the 7 of them have been rainy Saturdays, and people have just been fed up with the fact that the start of their weekend has been ruined every time with clouds and rain and wet weather. But this coming Saturday, my goodness, it'll take really a lot of the sting out with the temperatures, again, soaring through the 70s, maybe even going above 80, and we'll have lots and lots of sunshine. And, Sunday, people will probably just settle in their house and turn on the TV, and sport fans will probably watch as the Jets and the Giants traipse through the raindrops and chilly weather on Sunday afternoon. So
right. Just taking a look here at the 18Z, which has some kind of diver around the 7th and 8th. It actually has some blue snow in northern Pennsylvania and southern New York as a low redevelops east of the Delaware coast. So you have that. And then it looks kind of cold after that, too, if that's right. So trying to see if it's not, it doesn't, whatever it's doing in the Caribbean. So let me switch to the North Atlantic view. Excuse me. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it does develop the system in the Caribbean, but now instead of pulling it up, it just sort of meanders it eastward, and it just it just meanders in the Caribbean, in the Western Caribbean, rather than get picked up and pulled up the eastern seaboard. So who knows? Again, the takeaway for me is the fact that pressures are going to be lower there for the next 2 weeks. So it's like there's a higher probability that we will see at least one more named tropical cyclone develop in the next couple of weeks, and that's where it will be. And there you have it.
And Craig Carlberg says at least the 18Z run more modest and honest than the 12Z run was. But you know what? The thing that I've always said is that the 12Z run is the one to look at,
right,
and concentrate on. The 18Z is the one that never really gives you what really and truly is going to happen. But here we are. We have the 18Z showing something more sensible as opposed to the 12Z run. It'll be interesting tonight to see what the 0Z run comes up with and whether or not it still has a tropical cyclone
But that
threat.
was, but that would definitely, if something like that were to happen, that would fall into the category of of a strange thing,
Yes.
I think. All right, let's wrap up this work week because Joe and I are going to be off the next 2 days, and we'll be back Sunday night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time. So we could see if I got Briller Jeopardy. I think I do. I do. And also, by the way, in case you joining late, if you missed last night's show, you can find it on my YouTube channel homepage. It is Winter 2023-24. It's on the Joe and Joe Weather Show playlist. It's also on the special shows playlist, so you should be able to find it. Okay, what was the average first measurable snow, the date, okay, the date of the average first measurable snow in the following cities, okay? And
Okay.
the first one is Caribou, Maine.
How about the first measurable snow on average?
Right.
Oh dear me! I'm going to say Caribou, Maine. My goodness, could be right now. I'll
Except
say
right now they're burning up with the warm temperatures like everybody
I
else.
I understand. October. I'll say October 21st.
Um, very close, Joe. And Craig Carlberg got it right. October 23rd.
Wow.
Okay. Now the next one, Burlington, Vermont. Not
Oh, I.
Burlington, New Jersey. Not the Burlington Coat Factory.
How about
Burlington, Vermont.
November 14th?
November 14th. Um, a little late, but Rich Rothmansky got it on the nose. I hope you guys are guessing and not Googling these things, okay? Because it's no fun if you're doing that. November 4th. Okay, November 4th. So kudos to those of you who got it, picked the first 4 days of November without going over. You did well. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
December 1st.
December 1st. No, December
Yeah.
1st. Tyler Fienga says November 7th. Northern Grace and Sandy Blue Ocean, November 28th, as does Christinapedia. John Melander, November 20th. Rich Rothmansky, November 8th. Chuck Cardillo, November 21st. Owen Daniel says December 14th. Maggie P. on the 10th. The answer is November 14th.
Really?
Yes.
That early for Pittsburgh?
Yes, for the first measurable snow. Remember, that could be 0.1.
Yeah.
And they're subject to lake effects sometimes with the right wind.
It,
Central Park in New York City.
I think that would be like December 14th.
And you would think correct, December 14th. I figured you'd get that one.
Yeah.
And the last one is Atlantic City, New Jersey. Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Yeah, I can hardly remember when they got any significant snow period. Uh, December 23rd.
Okay. Chris Alley says December 24th. Tyler Fenga says December 23rd. Northern Grace says December 18th. Miss Fallerite says December 15th. Too early, Sandy Blue Ocean at November 30th. Rich Rothmansky says December 20th. And Frank Scalera gets it December 21st. December 21st.
Oh, darn it.
Is the first snow for a measurable snowfall for Atlantic City.
Just a little late
Yes.
for me. For me.
All right, so I think we can wrap this up tonight. Also, just want to let everybody know that the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is available on YouTube Podcasts, which is in YouTube Music, which is part of Google Podcasts, which will go away soon. But we are also on Spotify. So you can find us on Spotify. You can find last night's show on Spotify because I put it there. And we're also on Amazon Music. So if you're on those, and I'm sure we'll probably show up in all the other places that podcasts call home. But in case you, for some reason, can't find the YouTube channel and you're on the road and you want to play it in the car, and it's just easier to do it with it if you've got Spotify or you're on the treadmill, um, knock yourself out. Thank you, Carol DeCara, for the compliment. Any plans for the weekend?
No, not really. I'm hoping that maybe on. Well, I do. I'm planning on Saturday to spend the much of the day just cleaning up all the leaves that have fallen and doing some mulching and that kind of stuff. It's the last. I'm not going to say it's a. I will not be like other forecasts and say this is the last time we're going to see 80 degrees for until next spring because God,
You have to get it right. People keep saying that as we kept moving through the month of October. Um, uh, you're going to have to be right eventually.
yes.
You know, at least we hope it. We hope you don't want to be having 80-degree readings at the end of November.
And we've had well, maybe not 80-degree temperatures, but I can remember we had how many years ago was it now? 8 years, 10 years. We had Christmas Eve, Christmas Day was like 70 to
Right.
75.
Not that many Christmases ago.
Yeah,
Just actually a couple of Christmases ago. It was into the 70s,
yeah,
and they had half a foot of snow here. In that on that because of the way the storm system lined up and down the front up and down the
I,
east coast. It
I
came through
remember.
here and they got buried.
I remember it was like December 10th or 15th. We had like a foot of snow here, and then Christmas Eve
Right,
night,
got
it was
all
like
washed away.
heavy rain and fog, and the next morning, like, what happened?
That's the only, that was always the one thing I didn't, what used to make me sad was but the times when you get a big snowfall and then within like 3 or 4 days there'd be a rainstorm that would come and take temperatures to the 50s and just wash it all away. Just like with the blizzard of 96, with all the snow that fell with the blizzard of 96, it all got washed away like 10 days later when there was an animal the blizzard that went up up the Appalachians and buried Cleveland.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if you remember, I think it was 1979 or 78 that you and I were at midnight mass at St. Benedict's,
right.
and we were
So,
heading out, and it was like pouring. The rain was like pouring down, and I said, "Cheer up, Joe. One of these years, you'll get that big snowfall."
yeah. Well,
Uh,
it'll I had a white Christmas here last year, so I can't complain.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Everybody, we'll see you on Sunday at 7:35 p.m. Have a
We shall be here.
And thanks to the chairman Scott Briller for his super chats this week, and also for providing us with Briller Jeopardy. And we'll see you on Sunday. Nighty night. Have a great weekend.
Bye, folks.